Let's work on question 1 here. So we have an economy where firms compete for workers. Okay, the firms make zero profits. Now workers differ in their productivity per period. That productivity ranges between 0 to 150. Workers know their productivity, but firms cannot observe it. Okay, firms can pay either a straight salary or a piece rate pay. Now if they pay a piece rate pay, they must measure the output, and that output costs C euros per worker. Alright, now in part A, suppose that the cost of measuring the output is 0, which workers will work for the piece rate pay and which workers will go for the straight salary. Now, this is more of an intuitive question. If workers work for a salary, if they get a certain wage, what is that wage going to be? Well, because because the profits are 0 for the company, it means that the difference between what they pay and what the workers generate them is 0. Meaning that the wage is going to be equal to the average productivity of the worker. So that's going to be the average productivity of the worker. Now the question is, why is that the average productivity of the worker but not the actual productivity that the worker creates? Well, that's because of information asymmetry. The companies don't know how much you actually produce. So the best guess for them is to take the average of this range. What is the average between 0 and 150? Well, that's the middle value. That's 150 divided by 2, which is equal to 75 euros. That would be the wage. Now, since the cost of measuring the output is 0, it means that good workers that can generate more than 75 euros, are going to work for a piece rate. So they're not going to get that wage. So when the good workers leave, right? When the good workers leave, what's happening? When the good workers leave, well, by definition, that means that only bad workers are gonna go for the straight salary. Bad workers go for the wage. And only when we have bad workers, what happens to the productivity? Well, the productivity range is gonna diminish. It's gonna be from 0 until not 150, but something else. Let's call that, for instance, 60. Well, if only workers with this productivity is going to go for this straight salary, which salary is it going to be there? Well, it's going to be the middle value between these two, which is only 30 euros. Now, even people that can generate more than 30 euros are going to go for the piece rate. So still, there are some workers who have an incentive to leave. So the good workers, at least on this range, are still going to leave, and the wage keeps diminishing. The average productivity keeps diminishing. What is the highlight here? The highlight is this, without thinking about numbers, is that when workers get paid on average, that average by definition is always going to be diminished, because that's whatever value is in that distribution divided by 2. Whenever we divide a number by 2, it becomes smaller than that number. This is just, the most basic algebra. So this number would be less than the actual value that the worker creates. So if the worker can create a value of X and he can prove it to the company with 0 cost, he can get paid that value back, and that value is greater than the wage that would be based on the average productivity. So by definition, even by showing this simple example, we can see that no one has an incentive to get for the average pay, because again, that salary is going to always be lower than what he can prove to the companies themselves. Only the workers who get like 0 productivity, so they produce nothing, well, if they stay for the average pay, 0 divided by 2 would still be 0. So even the worst workers can get 0 under the straight salary or 0 under the piece rate. They would be indifferent. But whoever can produce at least something, they are better off to prove it to the company instead of getting half of their production. In other words, everyone is going to go for the piece rate. Hope this makes sense. In the next video, we go to part B.